I would like to introduce Monica from Otto Migration, who will be leading today's session. To make the best use of our time, we will begin with the presentation. Will be recorded. At the end of the session, we will open the floor for questions and answer. And thank you for joining us, Monica. The floor
Thank
is
you.
yours.
Hi,
No
everyone.
worries.
Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Perfect. Fantastic. I can see some reactions there. So I know that most of you probably are speaking Spanish as a first language. I'll introduce myself very quickly. My name is Monica, as Juan Pablo said. I'm the founder and principal migration agent here at Otto Migration Services, and nice to meet you, and thank you for joining today. Firstly, my first language is Italian, so today I will do the meeting in English. But if you can't understand something or whatever, at the end of this webinar, you will be allowed to ask some questions, and I'll be happy to answer. So today we have only 30 to 45 minutes together, and I would like to make sure that every minute is useful. So we'll cover the key visa pathways, the most common mistakes that I can see every day. It's 10 years nearly that I'm doing this job, so I could see many mistakes and many different scenarios. And obviously, we'll also understand how to study in Australia can connect to migration. So questions at the end, feel free to note them as we go. Let's start. So, what we'll cover today. Firstly, we'll have a quick overview of everything that it's basically practical. No unnecessary complexity. By the end, you should have a clear picture of how migration actually work and what your next steps are. We'll cover high demand careers, skills assessment, skilled and employer sponsor visa pathways, the most common mistakes, as I said before, that we can see every single day from clients, study pathways that lead to permanent migration, and then we'll have a quick overview about points, processing times, and the postgraduate visas, which in my opinion are the best temporary visa that someone can get in order to get experience, in order to have some extra time to lodge an employer sponsor visa or to be invited for an expression of interest. I know that if you guys are just arrived in Australia or you are here since just a few months, this wording, these terms may be something new, but we'll try to be basic and I'll try to explain everything appropriately. So let's go. Let's start with talking about high demand careers in Australia. So these are the occupations where Australia has consistent skill shortages. Why does this matter for migration? Because most skill visa pathways require your occupation to appear on the government skill list. There are several lists, so we will see them like later on in the presentation. If you are in one of these sectors that you can read here in the presentation, you are starting from a strong position. If you are not sure where your occupation sits, obviously that's exactly what a consultation is for. So, which are the high demand careers in Australia? We have construction and trades such as carpenters, painter, motor mechanics, bricklayers, tilers, joiners, and others. These are one of the best fields to be in at this stage because Australia is facing a very, very high demand of construction workers. This is because there's shortages with house accommodations and all those facilities that they are building in the regional areas as well. So construction, in my opinion, as a professional, is one of the strongest career that you can get if this is your job, obviously. Then we have healthcare. Healthcare is obviously a different pathway completely, but we find like nurses, social workers, psychologists, and so on. This is also a very strong niche to be in. And then we have all the engineering, especially the civil engineers. Those are very in demand. Hospitality, we have a few occupations than before. So chef and cook are still on the list. We have seen a decrease in demand like for restaurant managers or waiters and other occupations which are not that appealing today. Then we have technology, which includes occupations such as software developer, IT project manager, ICT customer service. We have a lot of occupations into the technology industry, and those occupations are quite fine. And we do sponsor a lot of these occupations in the past few years. So it's kind of still on a strong demand. And then we have business and finance. Business and finance is a bit wide as a field, but we mainly see that employers are sponsoring accountants and HR professionals. HR professionals, what does it mean? It includes recruitment consultant, HR advisors, we have HR managers. So we can see that a lot of businesses are keep on sponsoring these occupations. We also have some other occupations that popped up in the last changes when the sponsor visa was reviewed in 2024, in December 2024. We have occupations such as office manager, contract administrator, we have legal secretary. We have a few occupations which are still used by employers. So if you don't see your occupation here in this specific slide, that's fine. There's 456 occupations in the list that can obtain an employer sponsor visa. So the list is huge. So don't get scared. If your occupation doesn't appear here, you'll probably have your occupation in the wider list. Now, let's start with one of my favorite topic, because most of people will have some issues to understand what this is and what this is for. And we are talking about the skills assessment. So I'm not sure if some of you have heard about the skills assessment as yet. If you are new in Australia, probably you have read something on Google or you have listened that word from people that are here for a long time. But this is a step that most people underestimate or they don't know anything about it. So a skills assessment is a formal evaluation of whether your qualification and experience meet the Australian standards. So what does it mean? It means that we need to meet the Australian standards for your specific occupation. The critical thing to understand is that each occupation has a specific assessing body. So every assessing body has a different criteria, processing times, and the documentation requirements differ significantly. So getting these wrong will delay everything or will have a negative result. This is not a visa, obviously. So the skills assessment is a prerequisite for certain visa subclasses. So it's not something that gives you a status in Australia. I always recommend getting advice on it because you'll never know whether you need or you don't need a skills assessment, and people get very confused with this part. So let's see who assess what. As you can see, for example, as I was saying, there's many different skills assessment authorities. As an example, I've mentioned some of them in this presentation. So we have Engineers Australia that cares about all the engineering occupations. Engineers Australia is very particular because Engineers Australia does not require any work experience, but they want to see a bachelor degree in an engineering field. So even if you have an engineering bachelor degree or master, but you don't have any work experience, technically you can do the skills assessment. If you have a qualification, a bachelor degree as a nurse or midwife or as an accountant, as you can see, there's different assessment authorities for that. And these as well do not require any work experience. Then we have some other skills assessment authorities that are not that nice. What do I mean? It means that VetAssess, for example, which is the skills assessment authority for the majority of the office-related occupations, such as, contract administrator, office manager, chemistry technician, and other scientists. There's geographies. There's many occupations that VetAssess assess. And that assess requires at least 1 year of post-qualification work experience in the majority of each case. So that assess is one of those authorities that must be understood before we start the process. Then we have Trade Recognition Australia, TRA, TRA. You can see that that authority is mainly dealing with trade occupations. So we have automotive, motor mechanic, everything which relates to construction. And also Trade Recognition Australia assess cooks and chefs. So these two hospitality occupations are managed by Trade Recognition Australia. Trade Recognition Australia is particular because they require 3 years of full-time work experience or 6 years part-time work experience, which is a huge work experience requirement. There's some strategy to have that shortened, but obviously we will need to assess your specific situation for that. And then, last but not last, ACS, Australian Computer Society. As the word says, ACS delivers skills assessment for IT-related occupation. It's worth to note that for a skills assessment, we need a few months because usually the majority of applicants will need at least like 2 or 3 months to prepare the skills assessment documentation because some of the documents will be sent from overseas or they will need to be retrieved from your Australian taxation office statements and stuff. And also there's the assessment time itself, which can take between, depending on the authority, between 2 months to 4 to 5 months. So it's very important that if you have to do a skills assessment or if you want to do the skills assessment, you start on time. You don't take it last minute. This is not a last minute step. But let's see why we need the skills assessment and where is allocated in terms of visa pathways. So as you can see here, and this is the way that I start the majority of my consultations, we have 2 main routes to permanent residency. So the route A is the employer-sponsored visa, which is the skills in demand visa, subclass 482, which is where your employer nominates you for your occupation. You work for them for 2 years on this specific subclass 482, and then you can apply for your permanent residency through the subclass 186. The route B instead is what I define a lottery. It is the point-based system. You will hear me saying lottery 200 times when I will speak about the skilled visa, because this is actually what it is. So if you accumulate your points through your age, your English, your qualification, your work experience, and you receive an invitation, then you will basically complete your route B, which is your skilled visa. Skilled visas are permanent residency in the case of subclass 189 and 190, and temporary residency for 5 years for the subclass 491, where you can actually request your permanent residency at a later stage. Now, what do I say to all my clients is that the route A, which includes the employer-sponsored visa, is the most straightforward pathway to permanent residency because it's more concrete. It's something that works in this way. I know my occupation, I have my qualification, I have my work experience, I lodge my sponsored visa. 2 years later, when this visa is granted, I can lodge my permanent residency. Done. No point test required. Whilst with the point tested route, which is the skilled visa, we have 3 different visa subclasses. As I said, like each one is a bit different from the other, but it's worth to know that the subclass 189, which is the skilled independent visa, the state nominated visa subclass 190 are indeed permanent residents straight away. As we say, there's a point test to satisfy. I have break it up in points in one of my next slides. So this is a general introduction, and the next slide will introduce you to the employer-sponsored visa. So let's go and see that. Now, subclass 482 leading to 186, permanent residency. So what are the step-by-step actions to get these done? Firstly, your employer will need to become an approved sponsor. This is called standard business sponsorship. This is the first application that we need to lodge into our IMI account. This application is delivered and managed by the business, so you don't have to do anything with that. The business must basically show that they are financially able to sustain a sponsorship and an overseas candidate salary. So it's everything based on financial documents and regulatory documents. This is very important to know because every employer can actually become an approved sponsor if they meet the requirements. So if you're working in a business and that business has never sponsored anyone, this is not an issue. They can talk to us, we can explain them what we need, and we can get them the approval to sponsor some employees. The second application that we need to lodge in order to sponsor you from the employer side is called nomination. The nomination is the trickiest part of the process. What does it mean? It means that the employer will need, again, to submit their financial documents. They will need to nominate the occupation that you will fill up by working for them. Your occupation, obviously, must be part of the core skill occupation list, which is the list that I was mentioning before with 456 occupations. So there's a huge list of occupations that can be sponsored. On the other side, the employer must also promise to pay you a salary which meets the threshold, which means that if your employer wants to sponsor you, they must pay you at least $79,423 plus superannuation, which is the new salary, the new minimum salary for the sponsorship from the 1st of July this year. So in the nomination phase, we have the employer that nominates your occupation, the employer that provides you with a full-time contract, 38 hours per week with the minimum salary required. They will also need sometimes to advertise the role, to complete the labor market testing and other very technical aspects. But obviously, if you are working for a business and you are in the process of trying to be sponsored, you can book a consultation and we can see whether you meet the requirements and whether your employer meet the requirements, because every situation is very different. Third point, you finally apply your visa. So let's do a brief summary. To get sponsored, the employer must be approved as a sponsor. The employer must nominate you. You lodge your visa application. For the visa application, the skills assessment, most likely for you guys, is not mandatory. There's just certain countries that have the mandatory requirements, the obligation to provide the skills assessment. But most of you probably coming from Latin America, South America, will not have these requirements. So how you can do to check? You come to me, I'll tell you straight away whether you need it or don't need it. If we don't need the skills assessment, as the majority of cases, we are very lucky because we save money and we save time. We also will need to satisfy the English test. So we need to pass the IELTS test with 5 in each band, general module. So that's very important to know. And obviously, we hopefully must have the character checks clear. So no pending charges, no convictions recorded. If we have some convictions, we need to explain that through the visa application. Now, when your sponsorship has been granted, approved, and you are very happy with your employer, you work for 2 years in the same role, and then with that employer, you can actually be nominated for your permanent residency. The permanent residency, as you can see in point 5, is called subclass 186, Employer Nomination Scheme. This is a step which is not automatic. You will need to be nominated by your employer and lodge your visa application. So this is how, most roughly, all of you can be sponsored, following this process and following these steps. Now, let's see instead the pathway number B, so the point test for skilled visa applicants. As you can see in this lottery system, what we can do is accumulating points. It's all about points. It's all about being able to collect as many points as we can. So it's not as concrete as being sponsored by an employer. As you can see here, the way to accumulate points are several. I won't stay here to read all of them because you can read it yourself. But as you can see, it's age, skilled employment outside of Australia or in Australia. So all your work experience can count. But remember, the skilled employment will be assessed by the Skills Assessment Authority, because for this visa, it's not like the sponsorship. You must have a valid skills assessment. And so the skills assessment is the first step to then do the point-tested visa. This visa is also very particular because you don't lodge the visa itself. This visa is divided in several steps. You do the skills assessment, you calculate your points. The minimum point score required is 65. So if you see the tab, it's kind of very complex to understand how to accumulate points. Once we have reached 65 points, we lodge an expression of interest, which is basically our golden ticket to be invited for permanent residency. But you don't lodge any visa. So you will need to have your own visa, and then nothing happened. You basically lodge your lottery ticket and you stay there waiting. It's like playing Powerball. What happened later? This expression of interest will last for 2 years. If during these 2 years you receive an invitation, then you can lodge your permanent residency straight away. So it's very tricky, and every single candidate will have to have their employment assessed. They will need to have a super good English because we need to get points. And the fastest way to do your points is by getting 7 in each band at the IELTS test or 8 in each band at the IELTS test. Because as you see from the top, we can get 10 or 20 points just with the English test. So this pathway is advised, especially to people which have a good level of English. Also, it's worth to know that this specific pathway, so the point test visa, is very strong for construction workers because they are getting invited with as low as 65 or 75 points, while is the majority of the professional occupations, such as information technology, engineering, office-related occupations, such as marketing or whatever, they get invited with 85, 95, 100 points. So the more office-related you go, the more points you need to have. The more construction-related you go, the lowest point is needed. So it's very important to note. The priorities always can change. So Australian migration can always get a diverse perspective. And every year, every 2 years, there may be an update. But as the things are now, construction is the way to go for this specific stream. So if you're working in construction, you have more than 3 years work experience, have a chat with us and we'll see what you can do. Now, but remember, you will need to have at least 6 or 7 in each band at the IELTS test, just to make sure that you enter with enough points to be invited. Now, let's see the mistakes that cost people years. So I see these regularly. These are the 5 mistakes that I see most often for my clients. Every single one of them delays a migration pathway by months, sometimes by years. The common thread is that people make decisions without getting proper advice first. And ChatGPT is the worst you can get. Trust me, as a migration agent, I can see that ChatGPT is updated at 2 years ago legislation. So any advice that she will give it, or like every advice that ChatGPT gives you, is most likely 70% wrong, because ChatGPT will tell you what you want to hear. But this is not how a migration agent works. I'll tell you straight away if you can make it or if you can't make it. And if you can't make it, we'll assess what you have to do in order to make it happen. So it's very important to understand that a 45 minutes consultation at the right moment, especially at the beginning of your Australian journey, can prevent all of these mistakes that you see here. Starting studies without understanding your occupation first. This is the most common mistake that I can see from when I started this job. If you don't know your occupation, if you don't have a career plan and you start studying, you will waste years and you will waste a lot of money not preparing your English test enough, like early enough. Sometimes people couldn't lodge their visa because they couldn't complete their English test on time because they took it last minute and they couldn't make it. Not organizing overseas documents in advance. If you want to plan a migration pathway on your skills, you need to make sure to know what you need to collect, when you need to collect it, and how you need to collect it. Misunderstanding the postgraduate visa duration. The postgraduate visa that we'll check at the end of this presentation is very particular. It's a visa which is super beneficial because it gives you 1.5 years or 2 years of stay in Australia with full-time working rights, but it must be understood. Or the last mistake that you can make is assuming that your occupation is on the skill list without checking. As I said, if you check on ChatGPT, probably it's wrong because ChatGPT is updated with the list that we had 2 years ago. So it's not current. You need to know which legislative instruments has the occupation list on it. So stop working on ChatGPT and get an advice from a migration professional. That's much better. Now, study pathways to migration. Let's see what happened when you study in Australia. Studying in Australia sometimes is seen like I need to waste money, I need to waste time, but actually, if you do the right thing, if you complete the right studies, you can have your pathway built. Obviously, there's different kind of education level. We have vocational and higher education, and both somehow can lead to a pathway in migration, but they are very different and you need to understand them before choosing a course. So vocational courses, which are professional courses such as Certificate 3, 4, Diploma, Advanced Diploma, or trade courses in general, are often shorter or sometimes are cheaper than a bachelor degree. And for trade occupation, especially such as construction, specialized courses, it's a very good route to choose. But you need to understand what to do after. You need to understand which are the age requirements and the course requirements. The golden rule here is never choose a course based on the cost or based on the convenience without first confirming that that course is the right course for you and can give you a real migration pathway. I see often and often like people studying diploma in leadership and management. I just would like to kill myself when I see that because leadership and management, business, marketing, in vocational level are not useful in most cases. And they will get you to lose those money and the time that you're spending studying them. Sometimes you can spend less by choosing the correct bachelor degree or the correct master degree because you will take much less time to study. You will not stay in Australia on a 10-year student visa, right? That will take so much time for you to complete a migration pathway, and sometimes you can't make it. So in terms of vocational education, most likely we can reach invitations for trade occupations such as carpenters, cabinet makers, bricklayers, tilers, painters, or we can get the sponsor visa as well. With the higher education instead, we need to understand that those bachelor degree will most likely lead to office-related occupation, health-related occupation, information technology, engineering, civil engineering. Sometimes even a bachelor degree in business can be useful for certain candidates. But obviously, it all depends from your background, from where you are working, which is your industry, and how can we actually move to the next steps after you have completed your course. So before choosing a course and investing money, understand your pathway, understand your option A, your option B, and the contingency plan C, because everything must be confirmed. Now, Let's understand the postgraduate visa because this is a very interesting topic, and I know we are running out of time. We got at least a couple of slides left, so I'll try to make it work as much as I can. So, postgraduate visa and processing times. The postgraduate visa is your bridge between finishing your studies and your long-term migration pathway. The duration depends on your level of studies and also where you studied in Australia, which is a very important matter to say. Regional studies can give you a significantly longer postgraduate visa. We can have 1 or 2 extra years than we had before, but this is valid only if we study a bachelor or a master. So it doesn't work if you have studied a vocational course. So one critical rule that we have for the postgraduate visa is that you must lodge it within 6 months of your course completion date. If you lose this date, you can't lodge that visa anymore. So it's very critical to understand the timeline. We can't count this, the end date of your course from the graduation ceremony, but we'll need to check your confirmation of enrollment and your end date on the completion letter. So it's very important that we don't lose the date because we'll lose the visa possibility. There's often different dates and department use the official completion letter date. So it's very important that you check that document. Processing times are very approximate with this visa because sometimes it's just like auto-granted. Sometimes it takes a bit more, especially if we have more than one applicant or if we have to undertake medical examination or if we didn't complete a provisional skills assessment on time. But these are all technical things that we'll go through before lodging that visa for you eventually. Now, as you can see, I have made a tab which explains the duration of your postgraduate visa eventually. So if you study a construction-related course such as automotive or carpentry, cabinet making, bricklaying, painting, whatever, you will receive, or even commercial cookery like certificate 4 in kitchen management plus diploma of hospitality management. But even if you study childcare, certificate 3 in early childhood plus diploma in early childhood, we can have a postgraduate visa for 18 months. Full-time working rights, no questions, no limitations. If instead we want to study something at a higher level, such as a bachelor or a master degree, we'll have a 2 years postgraduate visa, no restrictions. If we have studied for at least 2 years in a regional area, a bachelor degree, and we have completed the course, or a master obviously, depending on which regional area you are based, we can have 1 year or 2 years as an extra. How you assess that based on the postcode? Some major regional centers will just give you 1 year, such as the Gold Coast. Sometimes if you are in a more remote regional area, you can have those extra 2 years. And then we have PhD graduates, which in any location can get a 4 years postgraduate visa. Obviously, this is a different pathways. But let's understand the processing times for the majority of the visas that we have spoken about today. And I have added the partner visa because some of you may be interested to lodge a partner visa in the future, which means that you have a partner who is Australian or permanent resident. The skills in demand visa, so the sponsorship, what we call sponsorship, is taking right now between 4 to 8 months to be granted or processed. The permanent residency for that visa, so the second step of the sponsorship, the permanent residency, will take between 12 to 20 months. There's a queue which is insane. It may drop, but right now there's a lot of backlog. So if you're waiting your permanent residency and it's taking more than a year, it's normal. We see it every day. It doesn't mean that your application is not ready, it's not perfect or whatever. It means that case officers are behind with checking your applications and other applications. Then we have the skill visas, the point-tested visas. And these are taking on an average of 6 to 18 months. But remember, to lodge this visa, you need to receive an invitation. So it's not something that we can see immediately in terms of pathway. It's a pathway that must be built. And then we have partner visas, which usually took like 3 to 6 months and now are taking 1 or 2 years to be granted. So as you can see right now, the processing times from the Department of Home Affairs are very long. So if you have lodged even a student visa or a postgraduate visa and you didn't receive it yet, don't worry. It's normal. Processing times are longer right now. So don't get nervous, don't get frustrated. It's just how it is today. It's slow. So if you have lodged your student visa in January and you didn't receive it yet, it's kind of normal. It shouldn't be normal, but it is normal with the processing times that we have today. Let's see the keys takeaway before I leave you to ask some questions. Now, what we understood today, we need to validate your occupation. We need to understand your migration pathway before choosing a course. That's the most important thing that I want to repeat and repeat and repeat. Start your English preparation early. Don't speak your language only. Speak English. Understand it. Eat it. Like, just make sure that your preparation starts early. Organize your overseas documents, especially when it's about work related documents, pay slips, tax returns, reference letters. These documents are important. And also remember that the subclass 482, so the employer sponsor visa, is the most reliable route to permanent residency. Remember that state nominations, skill visa, and all those visas are to be prepared earlier because we have to do the skills assessment first. Remember that you get proper advice before taking any decision. Also, take note that migration law changes constantly. And if your situation is assessed by someone who is practicing migration law, such as a registered migration agent or lawyer, they will understand that your case is unique. There's no general advice here. It doesn't work. General advice will never take you where you want to go, especially if your main goal is to get the permanent residency. And that's where we are here for, to drive you into the immense legislation requirements, criteria, and all those boring stuff. We'll break it up for you and we'll help you to analyze your situation. Remember that at the beginning of each consultation, we will have assessed your resume, your visa grant letter, your qualifications, your work experience, your passport, your age. We always need to assess those things before even starting a consultation. So that's why I'm saying that it's very important that you prepare earlier instead of wasting your time with things that are just cheap. Cheap doesn't work. There's nothing in Australia which will lead you to permanent residency and it's cheap. They can't match. It's something that will never work. And now I'll get back with Juan Pablo and I'll ask you guys if you have some questions. Please remember that questions must be a bit generic because by the code of conduct, I can't answer to your particular situation before assessing your documents. So if you have some curiosity of what we've said today, I'm super happy to answer. So I'll let the word to Juan Pablo.
Thank you so much, Monica. Everything was so good. And
Good.
just remember you can type the questions that you have on the chat. Feel free to ask Monica if you have something uh, to say. And as well, we have a consultation fee for NOMADAS students. Just remember that it's 198. Otherwise, it would be 275.
75.
Yeah, you can ask for your guide if you need something as well, and we can send you the links to book a consultation with them. And yeah, just feel free if you have questions about.
No preguntas.
¿Alguna pregunta por ahí?
Oh, there's someone asking if they can receive the call recording via email.
I will try to do it. The session is recorded. I will try to to check if I can send it to you by email.
Don't be shy, guys. Even if you have a question that seems a bit silly or basic, just send it over. Oh, okay. Costanza said that she has understood, but not everything. It's normal, Costanza. I know that English sometimes at the beginning of your journey is a bit complicated. Yo puedo entender el español, pero no puede hablar.
Constanza, si tienes alguna pregunta y la quieres escribir en español, la puedo preguntar a Mónica.
Oh, little heart. Thank you. There's someone like doing noise here in Sydney. So if no one has questions, I'll let you go. I'll give you the last seconds. Oh, okay. We have one.
He's asking that she.
Yeah, I've understood that because I can read Spanish. So I'll answer in English and I'll try to make sure that we touch everything. So I understand that you're studying English for 6 months and your visa will expire in March 2027. And obviously, you have to decide what to do in Australia. Now, the first advice that I can give you is understand where are you working, understand that if your job can give you a career, if it doesn't, and English is what stops you, just try to focus on your English preparation as much as you can. And then when you have accumulated a bit of more confidence with English, then you can try to basically find a career which is on the sponsor list. And being sponsored will only require you to have cinco al test IELTS. So it's not that high. Sponsorship probably will be much easier for someone that doesn't speak English very well or in an academic way. It's possible. I've seen clients that have made it. So try to study English, and then when you are about December or even November, if you want, you can book a consultation with Jason. Jason is a migration agent working for me and he speaks Spanish. So you can do your consultation in your own language and you can try to design your plan based on what you have done even in your home country. Sometimes it's underevaluated.
Thank you so much, Monica. The next one is Maureen, that she's asking, is it possible to apply for a sponsored visa with just a certificate 3 in aged care without
Aged
experience?
care is something that I really do not recommend to anyone studying because aged care, as far as you don't have an employer that has a labor agreement in place or is enrolled to a union, cannot sponsor because aged care is not on the standard sponsoring list. So if you're studying aged care, or if you're deciding, if you're not studying aged care, but you want to study aged care, think about it carefully. Probably have a meeting with us first, and then you can see that it's very hard to be sponsored in that field. I can't understand why there are a lot of student agency that suggest aged care, aged care, aged care. Aged care doesn't really lead to anything except if the employer is part of a union and has a labor agreement. So it's very tricky to understand this, but it's very important to note. It's not my favorite pathway.
She's saying that she's an engineer to prevent risk and she's studying English, like general English, and she's preparing for the IELTS.
Well done.
She wanted to have the contact of you I will share the link through the chat and also the discount code for Nomadas students. And
Yes,
someone that I don't know the name is asking that is the painter trade a good migration pathway for Colombians, considering Colombia is a level 3 risk in Australia?
it doesn't matter the risk level for Colombians because the course it's something else. So it depends from the school that you're choosing. So if the school is level assessment 1, you're good to go. And anyway, remember guys that even if your student visa is refused, we can appeal. And during the appeal period, you can work, you can gain extra experience, you can be sponsored. So if your visa is refused, don't get desperate. We can stay in Australia anyway. The main thing is that we will need to lodge the appeal on time and with the right documents. Painter is a very good occupation. This is something that I always suggest to clients that are doing trades because there's not many painters. And if your English is good and you have 3 years of full-time work experience, I will also try the point-tested visa if your English allow you to do so. So painting, yes. Aged care, a bit more complex. Anyone else that has a question? I love questions.
Thank you so much, Mónica. ¿Alguien más tiene alguna otra pregunta? It's asking, thanks. Also, carpentry or cabinet maker, which one is better option to study as pathway?
There's not much difference because they both work in the same way. So it depends what you like the most and where do you think that you can find employment first. But both carpentry and cabinet maker are trade related roles, so they can both be eligible for sponsorship or for the point tested visa. So wherever you want to go, green light. There's really no difference. Like there's no best or worst between the two occupations because they are very similar. Points for cabinet maker, carpenters, motor mechanic are all sitting between 65 and 75, very low. No worries, Maureen. Like every trade, everything, painter, cabinet maker, joiner, tiler, electrician, even if electrician is a bit more complex with the qualification, they are all being invited between 65, 75 maximum points, which is very low.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Maureen.
She has a question. Certificate for building and construction. This usually is paired with certificate 3 in another trade and usually is utilized together with a certificate 3 in carpentry, in cabinet making, or whatever, whether the certificate 3 is only 1 year, you add 1 year of certificate 4 in building and construction or diploma to make it 2 years for the 485 visa, for the postgraduate visa. So you don't really use that course by itself. You couple that with something else. That's the purpose. Because the certificate for in building and construction is a bit general. So it's utilized to make the 2 years Australian study requirements.
He's asking if they could apply for a sponsor without experience.
Oh, that's the second question. No, you can't. You always have to have 1 year full-time work experience or 2 years part-time. Remember, casual, it's a bit difficult, and all the weeks that you work less than 20 hours do not count. No, you never apply without experience. Always experience. No, Trade Recognition Australia is skills assessment. You don't need the skills assessment for the sponsorship, except if you come from certain countries. And also, Trade Recognition Australia will ask you for 3 years. Any last question before I go? You're welcome, Maureen. I guess that we are just like a few people left. So thank you, Juan Pablo, for taking time and introducing me. And thank you, everyone who have listened and participated this webinar. And see you next time.
Thank you so much, Monica, for everything, and all the information was really, really
Thank
useful.
you. My pleasure. My
Uh,
pleasure. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.